You used a variety of instrumentation on the album, both larger and smaller ensembles, depending on the needs of the song. The most spare track is the last one on the album, which contains just two elements. That'd be your piano playing and the voice of Tylee Ross, who really gets into the part. It's a very Cole Porter-esque composition called The Style to Which I've Become Accustomed. It's sung from the perspective of a wealthy but unhappy person who has every material luxury but no meaningful human connections in their life. What was the spark for that one?
Well, that song we started because we were great admirers of those kind of long-form standards like Lush Life and Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most and The Ballad of the Sad Young Men, and those songs that don't adhere to just this kind of 32-bar quickie standard format. Mm-hmm. And so we needed a little more of a complicated, I guess, complex three-dimensional character at the heart of it, and that's Jeff came up with this kind of Howard Hughes, Citizen Kane guy at the center of the song with crazy money and no one to love, basically.
How important was the word accustomed? Because apart from I've grown accustomed to her face, I don't think I've ever seen that word in a song title until now.
Yeah, well, it's that turn of phrase. It tends to be in a divorce hearing. You hear, well, someone's got to be maintained in the style to which they've become accustomed.
That's it, yeah.
And I guess Jeff had that in his list of song ideas or titles, and he loves a challenge, and that's a bit of an innately clunky phrase, mm-hmm. And certainly was a bit of a handful for me to even figure out how that would scan musically, but the long form of the song allowed us to have 3 or 4 sections and then variations on those 3 or 4 sections kind of interweaving over the course of the tune. And Tylee, who's a great actor as well as a ridiculously technically amazing singer, seemed like the right guy to do it, and he's actually done that song live with us in New York a bunch of times. He was the Canadian lead in The Who's Tommy for years when it opened in Toronto, and Pete Townsend came up and handpicked him as the lead.
Wow.
And he went on and did that in New York and ended up there.
Well, my original note I dropped, but now that you've said what you said, I'll put it back in. I describe this as a song that's not in a hurry. It's very it very leisurely unravels over 6 minutes. I thought, I don't want to say it's a song that's not in a hurry. That might sound critical or offensive, but that's what you were going for. So hey, I was on it.
No, that's right. Yeah,
I was on
it's
it.
Deliberately long form. I mean, I don't know how well you know the tune Lush Life, but you can't do that tune. You do. It's not like a tune where you play the head and then you take some solos and you do the whole tune again at the end.
Yeah.
If you're going to do Lush Life, you just do it from the verse to the end, and you're done. Like you've been at it probably 5 minutes at least, just if you do the form of the song once.
Have you heard Johnny Hartman's version of that song?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a collector of Lush Life interpretations, so I've got you get to that point in my iTunes library, and it just says Lush Life for about a full page.
Well, in contrast to the melancholy of that track, you've got one called Not You, which is performed by another artist who's better known in Canada than the U.S., but who I definitely remember from the 80s. That's Ian Thomas. Musically, the track is heavy on the clarinet with a dash of dobro, and the lyrical conceit is a series of fake-out lines that are always undercut by the word not, as in, who has a heart that's built for two? Not you.
Right.
So it's funny stuff. So to me, that's kind of a Satchmo feel. What inspired that one?
Let me see. Sometimes these tunes have been around long enough that the genesis of them becomes a little murky even for me. But I know that right out of the gate with that tune, I was thinking Randy Newman.
Yeah.
So definitely old-timey, and the fact of even having clarinet on it rather than sax or trumpet is a bit of a nod to Randy, who loves the woodwinds. And in fact, my original demo of it was sung in my kind of faux Randy Newman voice. And Ian Thomas also happens to be the brother Dave Thomas from Second City.
Yeah.
and is equally hilarious.
Right. Well, he was on
So,
SCTV one time, and that's how I knew who he was.
yeah, so that's right. He was on SCTV. That's right. But American audiences, like if you go back far enough, he had a hit called Painted Ladies in the 70s, and then he wrote some hits for other people in the 80s. Like you said, he wrote a Santana tune and an America tune. But he fundamentally is just a straight-up hilarious guy, like to the point where you have to remind yourself to get work done because it's going to be funny if he's on the mic. And in fact, I'll give you a little backstory. During the clarinet solo, when he was tracking his vocal, about halfway through, he went into the Bob and Doug McKenzie voice and said, "Oh, that's me on the clarinet, eh?" So that brought the house down. But anyway, he came in. He said to me, "You were definitely going for a Randy Newman thing," and I said, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean you have to." And he said he was picturing more of a Harry Nilsson approach, with a little extra sadness in with the funny.
Yeah, he doesn't. He says sort of the sad clown thing. He doesn't sound like he's that happy about what he's saying, but he's not destroyed either.
No, you can't be too destroyed when you got that little peppy groove going on.
Yeah,
in the
it kind of made
background.
me think of "Dream a Little Dream of Me," kind of da 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 da, kind of that little kind of thing. Maybe because of the clarinet harmony, I don't know. Which is why I thought Satchmo and also the lyrical content is the kind of thing that I could picture Louis Armstrong singing. But also Randy Newman makes perfect sense. We've got one called Wonder Boy, which is about a woman who has recently broken up with someone. She's at a bar. I guess that's a good setting for standards, bars, where a guy is hitting on her, and because he physically resembles her ex, and also because she's buzzed from the alcohol. And she leads him on for a while, but ultimately she rejects him. You created a really gorgeous musical bed for that one, and of course paired it up with yet another stunning vocalist, Laila Bialy. If you can remember, do you remember how you got the idea for Wonder Boy?
I'm almost positive the lyric on that one came first, but I remember it being something that was specifically written to fill the stylistic hole in our repertoire, because I don't think we had more than maybe one other bossa nova or Latin kind of mid-tempo tune to choose from at that point. And we thought it would be fun to write something that was maybe a little bit like The Look of Love, something in that mold.
Yeah, the instrumentation sounds really nice.
Well, that's nice to hear, because to me, as the arranger, that's the one other song on the album where I just wish I had the big string section, because it's just crying out for it. But it's not that I'm unhappy with the way it turned out, but it just felt like one of those. It'd be great to give it that kind of huge, expensive, 60s studio orchestra kind of.
I can see what you're saying, but interestingly, I think we feel a lot of that in our own heads. When I first listened to the early Beatles when they were self-contained before they went in the studio, it just sounded so full to me in my mind. And then later I listened back, I go, there's really not that many elements in here. I think my brain was filling in a lot of it, or Ringo's bashing on the cymbal maybe was doing it.
Well, no, that's true. You make a good point that I think idiomatically we're used to certain things, certain textures happening in certain kinds of songs, and if it's not there, your brain kind of goes, yeah, okay, well, let's let my brain put in the Johnny Mandel string arrangement, and then let the record do the rest.
And you're using the keys to sort of, play some of those parts anyways. It's just not as many instruments as you'd like.
Right, that's all.
Well, the most dramatic, maybe even melodramatic tune on the album is called Missing Me. It's about a woman who doesn't so much miss her ex as she misses the side of herself which he brought out of her. It's actually kind of a selfish perspective, with all of her regrets and memories being focused on herself, which kind of makes me understand why the guy left. Your vocalist Sarah Sleen has a sort of Eartha Kitt quality, and that's a pretty theatrical presentation. So was it written for a show?
No, it wasn't. Although that's a fair question. We've written a couple of musicals, and so occasionally one of our self-sufficient freestanding tunes will come off like maybe it's part of a larger something. Especially if the character is well drawn, which I really think it is in that song. But you make a good point, which is that it's really not about missing the person. It's about missing who you were when you were with that person, which is maybe a subtle distinction sometimes, but that's the idea behind the song. And I kind of went at it thinking, sometimes Jeff will hand me a lyric, and then a couple of weeks will go by and he doesn't hear anything. He wonders if what I'm up to, and then I'll come back with something that completely, stymies him at first, and it is different from what he was picturing the tune. And this is one of those, because I went with that kind of pedal tone going through a lot of it, and just those kind of right hand, almost Tchaikovsky or Chopin kind of chords, little diminished chords and things that are idiomatically not really part of jazz. But I think the whole thing skates along on this kind of pulse that pushes it along.
That's funny. All those words you used, the pedal note and pulse, and use diminished. I put maybe dissonant in my notes as I listen to the song. That's all the stuff I wrote down. So definitely, and yeah, it does have a lot of sort of percussion flourishes. It almost has like Chariots of Fire at the beginning, and
right, yeah, and it's got that kind of art song. I don't know, it's a technique where the voice and the piano kind of shadow each other exactly.
Yeah.
So it's less about that kind of somebody comping in a jazz style and somebody singing a free standing melody over top. The melody is more chained to the instrumental in this song, I think, than in any of the others.
They sort of travel together. Dun 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 dun. They go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's cool, but I mean, I heard it, and like I said, also there's a little bit of more of a diva quality to the singer in terms of the attitude of the song. It's like, notice me, look at me, which is perfect because the song's called "I Miss Me." So.
Well, yes.
Missing
Sarah's a true original, and again, she's another one in our singer corps who happens to be an extraordinary songwriter and recording artist in her own right. Mm-hmm. So we're always glad when she comes in and lends herself to us.
Just one more song to talk about. I've kind of saved the best for last here in a sense, because this is probably my favorite lyrical concept on the album. It's a tune called Ghostwriter, which is about a woman who buys a used coat, possibly at a thrift store, then discovers letters that the previous owner had sewn into it, presumably for safekeeping, and they're from a soldier who's fighting in France. And since she doesn't know anything about these people other than what she reads in their letters, from her perspective, they're ghosts. Hence the term ghostwriter, not the usual usage of it when somebody writes something that somebody else takes credit for, ghostwriting.
Right. I thought that was a neat little turn on the phrase that Jeff came up with, and thank you for actually delving into the lyric enough to really figure out what's making it tick, because that is the story, just as you said it. And it's one of those ones where you almost feel like it could be the seed for a movie or a musical or something, because it's got that whole epic story across the decades kind of built into it.
Exactly. You don't know if it's a contemporary person, also from the 40s, World War II, or if it's somebody who found it 25 or 30 years later. And it almost kind of doesn't matter, because the point is she doesn't know the people. She just has a little glimpse into their life because she accidentally found these letters. It wasn't anything she did wrong. She just stumbled upon them. And in a way, if the people are long gone, it sort of helps them and their feelings for each other live on in a way.
Yeah, and you kind of put your own internal movie maker to work and figure out the rest of their story. In fact, when we were working on it, I said to Jeff, is this Second World War or First World War? And he said, I'm glad you don't know.
I thought about that too.
He didn't want to get too specific with it.
Well, she mentioned buying the jacket on the Strand, so
yeah.
If that is a clue or not, but as to where the person is, because there were people in England fighting parts of World War II that we didn't at different times in different regions and everything.
That's right, yeah.
Although the music marries perfectly with the lyrics. It's very poignant, and the cello is a nice touch. And, of course, again, the perfect singer, Sophie Millman.
Sophie Millman, yeah, she's wonderful. She's, I think, Russian background, and she was, her story is that I think she was an economics student, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe history, at University of Toronto, and somebody from a record label up there got wind that she was singing in small venues and stuff, and went to check her out and immediately signed her and
Mm-hmm.
plucked her out of her studies, and she went on to make a whole bunch of great records, and kind of in the jazz standard vein, and she has quite a following.
Yeah, well,
north of the border.
another thing too is listening to your album makes me want to hear more by these different people. So it's also I won't use the word promotion, but it's good to discover someone like her and some of the other vocals we've talked about, and it certainly doesn't hurt because I do want to hear more by them. Well, earlier we asked the question, "Where's Mantis Ivar?" One of the places you can find him is here because you included that Monkey House track as an example of a co-write with your brother.
Yeah, well, we I'll tell you confidentially, between you and me and every single person who's listening to this, that we actually asked Bare Naked Ladies if they wanted to do that tune.
Nice.
Because we thought, it would be completely different from the kind of Steely Dan take that I did on it. But
I would, yeah.
But they had the sense of humor and the kind of brainy persona that they could carry it off. And for whatever reason, I got the feeling it was mostly timing. That didn't happen. And the record label happened to be in common, and so Peter Cardinelli, whose label had put out the Monkey House record, already had a license on Mantis Ivar, and said, "Well, let's just do the version. Let's put the version we have on there." So that tune is the one ringer that existed before we made this record, but it seemed to belong there.
It's a Breithaupt Brothers composition.
Yeah, it's one of our faves, so we wanted it on there.
Yeah. Now, of course, Volume 2 implies a Volume 1. Was that a live album?
Yeah, the first one was a live record. I think it was from our very first show in Canada, because we started doing the shows in New York, and it was actually quite a few years before we did it north of the border. And some of the same artists are on there. I think Sarah's on there and Patricia. But it's a whole different set of singers and all done in one night, and so it's got that kind of contained feeling of a live record where you're not going to suddenly have cello on one cut and then clarinet on the next one and then solo piano on the next. But that record came out great too, and it was sort of a nice seed for us doing more stuff in Toronto and in Canada.
Yeah, I'm ready for Volume 3 right now.
Yeah, well, what we're thinking is probably Volume 3 will be, we'll end up doing it in New York, and hopefully getting some of the people who have been with us almost since the beginning, like Kate McGarry and Carolyn Lenhart and Catherine Russell, and we've had some amazing singers in New York do our stuff over the years, and it'd be fun to sort of do the New York record next time.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's the long-range plan.
Yeah, well, you got to give yourself a break. You can't start the next one tomorrow. You just got this one out recently, so.
No, I got to do a Monkey House record first.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. Most people don't have the talent to do both of those, and so you're rare in that regard. Well, in addition to writing all these wonderful songs together, the Breithaupt Brothers have also written books together. I initially intended to cover those in this episode, but soon realized that if I did, I'd be shortchanging not only the books, but also all of this music we've been spotlighting. So what we're going to do instead is talk about those books in a separate episode, which will be the next episode to air. They're about the pop music of the 70s, which is a topic near and dear to my heart, as it's the musical era in which I came of age. And I know that's also the case for many of you listening right now. You're my prime demographic. Don has kindly agreed to return for that discussion. In the meantime, I encourage everyone to pick up Headquarters by Monkey House and Just Passing Through, the Breithaupt Brothers Songbook, Volume 2. Those should tide you over for a while, but in the event that you still want even more, be aware that there is a 44-track Monkey House retrospective collection available as a download only at CD Baby. It's comprised of all the Monkey House material released prior to Headquarters. Do you want to fill us in on the details of that release?
Well, it's just one of those things where actually I give my girlfriend Maureen full credit on that one, because I had bought back my masters from the labels Plural that originally put out those Monkey House records, and some of the publishing had reverted to me as well, and then suddenly I realized, okay, well, I own I own the copyrights by and large, and I own the masters. What am I going to do with them? And sometimes it's a lot to contemplate. Getting a batch of hard copies pressed and trying to figure out physical distribution.
Yeah,
and then I realized that there was no cap on how many tracks you could put on a digital-only release at CD Baby. Unlike iTunes, they have a certain price structure where every track has to cost at least 99 cents, no matter what the record's all about.
Yeah.
But I realized that I could throw in instrumentals and interview clips and alternate versions of songs, and I ended up with this, I think you said 44 track collection, and just offered it straight up digital only, $20. And it's been great because a lot of people discovered Monkey House on the Headquarters album and wanted to go back and see what led to that, because the band's actually been together since 1992. So I just think it's healthy to have the stuff out there.
So if somebody gets Headquarters and then they get this collection, they pretty much have everything Monkey House plus some bonus stuff, I guess.
Yeah, with very few exceptions, you've got the works if you get the two of those things. And I had actually been asked to do these interview clips for something for one of the record companies, and it never got used. But I thought they were informative and sort of filled in the blanks for some people, because occasionally there'd be like 6-7 years sometimes between albums, and people that you counted as fans were scratching their heads wondering what was going on in the meantime. And the answer is, I was having a family and writing TV music and, doing gigs and making a living. And sometimes your original project doesn't make it to the top of the pile, the list of things to do often enough. But that's changing now. I feel like I'm just going from one creative, interesting record project to the next at this point.
Well, that's great. And honestly, I didn't hear about that in time to include it, with a little more detail, but I think we've had a lot of music in this episode, and people, I can't do everything for you people. You have to go do some of it yourself. So you need to get so get these albums I mentioned, and every single track is a gem. Well, it's time for websites, of which I know you're associated with many. So just staying focused on the two items we've been spotlighting, what are the best ways for listeners to acquire those albums and also to keep tabs on what you're doing?
Well, the Breithaupt Brothers Songbook Volume 2 and Headquarters are both on Alma Records, so you can buy it through their website, but of course they're also available wherever, first-rate music products are sold, like iTunes and Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. And then, like you said, the Monkey House retrospective is CD Baby only. And then, of course, if you want to keep up with what's going on release-wise and gig-wise and special guest-wise, all that stuff, you can friend me up as an individual on Facebook, or follow Monkey House on Facebook, or follow the Breithaupt Brothers on Facebook. We're social media'd up.
That's why I said I know you're associated with many places, so I just wanted to let you steer people the ones you preferred.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a website, but it's far more. I find like people who have their own domains, they kind of get dusty and underused sometimes, because most of the action is on Twitter and Facebook these days between the artists and the fans.
Very true. I would agree with that. Well, I'm going to close the show now with your title track, Just Passing Through. It has more of a gospel feel, and it's a little edgier than the other tracks, and its lyrics are perhaps a little more philosophical in nature. So what inspired that one?
Yeah, it's a little anthemic. Well, oddly enough, the origin of that one is we were up at the family cottage, which, depending what region of North America you're in, you could also call the cabin, whatever it is, the summer place. Mm-hmm. And my son Miles, who was just maybe 5 or 6 at the time, went tiptoeing through someone's room up at the cottage. Well, it was Jeff, my co-writer and lyricist, and he tiptoed through and was trying not to wake anyone, and he said, "Just passing through." And, Jeff thought it was so funny that he, this little kid even thought he had to make an excuse for that. But Jeff, being a compulsive title gatherer that he is. He wrote it in his notebook, and it wasn't for years, actually, that it blossomed into a song. But it's a bit of a manifesto. I mean, if you're not listening carefully, it actually sounds like a real gospel tune. It sounds almost religious, but the lyrics are not religious, but they're certainly, like you said, spiritual/philosophical. And I think they have a really positive message. And Jackie Richardson, who sings the song on the album, is a really well-known gospel, old-school soul artist in Toronto, and kind of in the Aretha Franklin vein.
Well, Don, on behalf of my listeners and myself, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me about all this great music you've written. I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to our next conversation in the extremely near future.
Me too, Dan, and I really got to thank you, because it's nice when you find the right end user for your music, and somebody really delves into it and gives a damn enough to look into the liner notes and the lyrics and sort of connect the dots, and you've done all that. You did a lot of homework, and I really appreciate it. And I hope that if we're lucky, our next conversation will be in person. We're not that far.
That's true. I expect to start spending more time out in L.A. It's on my plans for 2015. And through this podcast, I've made a lot of friends out there. I'd like to go start meeting them. And back to you, I appreciate you putting out material that's worth my time and attention. You're used to being in that environment where things are really good, but it's more rare probably than you might realize. So it's a pleasure for me to delve into something really of quality.
Well, thank you again, and if you're ever in LA, you know where to find me.
I do, and I'll take you up on that. This podcast was recorded at Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, Germany. Wait a minute, back up. This podcast was recorded at Mojo Recording Studio in Phoenix, Arizona. As always, it was engineered by Mike Post. Once again, I'd like to thank Don Breithaupt, Jeff Breithaupt, David Blaemeyers, and Drew Zing. We'll be back soon talking 70s. In the meantime, there's another excellent vocalist, Jackie Richardson, with the Breithaupt Brothers composition, Just Passing Through. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. So long, everybody.
Why meet hate with hate? We're only passing through. Just refuse the bait. I'm only asking you, I'm asking you to seize the day. It's getting late and we're just passing through. Oh yeah. And oh, I know, though it sometimes seems the world's just hassling you, stepping on your dreams, denying you your due. Hey, those clouds are hiding sunny beams, and they're just passing through. And since it all goes by in the blink of an eye, tell me, what's the point of that done me wrong mood? You can heave a sigh, heave it away, bye, bye, bye. Now let's work on that bad attitude. Oh, do you hear me, do you hear me, do you hear me now? Work on it. that done me wrong mood. You can heave a sigh, heave it away, bye-bye. Now let's work on that bad attitude. Oh, turn it down, turn the static down. Oh, you see, we're only passing through. Can't you hear the sound? Listen, the planet's asking you, she's asking you to leave her better than you found her, 'cause you're just passing through. Don't you know you are just passing through? And oh, we all are just a passing. Oh, she wants you to know we're passing. We're only passing through.